I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our October 21st Planning Commission meeting. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bergman? Present. Commissioner Gutierrez?
Present.
Commissioner Marsters?
Present.
Vice Chair Silberman?
Present.
And Chair Harper-Pedersen?
Present. Thank you. And now the next item on our agenda is public comment, and public comment is limited to items that are not on our posted agenda. So is anybody here to talk about items that are not on our posted agenda today? Okay, seeing nobody and having no speaker cards, we're going to go ahead and move on to the approval of the minutes. We had two sets of minutes to approve from September 30th and October 7th. So let's go ahead and start with the 30th. Did anybody have any changes or additions to the September 30th minutes?
I had two.
Mm-hmm.
The first is on page 4.
Mm-hmm.
The third paragraph starts with Vice Chair Silberman.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I didn't ask staff for future clarification on the below market rate units. I think I actually asked for clarification that meeting, and it was provided that meeting, and the rest of the stuff was future. So unless someone remembers differently, I think it should just say and ask staff for clarification that the city cannot require below market rate units, blah, 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 blah. He also asked for future clarification on the issue of unbundling parking. So that's one change that I would request. And then the other thing on the bottom of page 4, I don't think I asked staff to make that explicit. I don't remember who did. I agreed with that request, but I didn't feel like I made it. I feel like someone else did.
I think you're right. Was that me or was that you, Scott?
I don't think it was me, so could have been you.
Yeah.
And through the chair, if the commission doesn't exactly remember, because I know there was a lot of discussion, we're happy to change it to the commission requested in other instances.
Okay.
That's fine. I don't mean to be, I just want to, I read them and
Right.
I'm probably being overly accurate.
No, I'm with you. I also had a couple I wasn't quite sure about. Though now I can't read my own notes. On the top of page 5, when we were talking with Jay, I know that Jay had said that there was not a way to add a pedestrian reprieve, but later in that meeting he did say there was a way to add a small one. I don't know where that was, though, but I know he said it, and I know he said it September 30th.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that that's in the record.
Okay.
And then, let's see. No, that was my only one for September 30th. Did anybody else have anything else for September 30th?
No.
Okay.
Then I'd move approval as amended.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Can we go ahead and move on to the October 7th minutes? And
To the chair,
Yes.
as people are looking, I don't know that this is important. I do note that normally it does seem like the actual votes are recorded. I don't know that that it's necessary, but on the ordinance prohibiting parking shuttles and taxis, I did vote against that. And the minutes don't reflect that it was 4-1.
right on
So,
page 5, it just
yeah.
says motion passed, right?
So if that's something normally you would do to note that I was opposed, if you wouldn't mind doing that, I would appreciate that.
And for the record, can you state where you mentioned
Yeah,
page 5?
on page 5, the last full paragraph that begins the commission requested.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, it says motion passed. I don't know if it should say motion passed 4-1 or whatever it would normally say.
We can reflect that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And then, let me see. These are kind of small also, but on page 3, paragraph 4, when we were talking about building 8, I did say, it says that I had requested that building 8 remain as presented, and I'd actually said I was open to a step-down reduction near the depot on building 8, but I didn't exactly know how to go about that, and it didn't seem like that was the consensus of the dais. And then on, man, I really need to write better notes because I cannot read a word I say. And then I think there was some, on the top of page 4 in the top paragraph, I just wanted it noted that it was Jesse's suggestion for the 25 years, just so that people knew that, because it was. And then also on the second paragraph on page 4, we'd had a small discussion. I had asked instead of 50 if it could go to 35 as a compromise, though that didn't go anywhere. I just want people to know that we talked about these options. And those were the only additions and changes I had to the 7th. Did anybody else have any changes or additions to the 7th?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
And I would move approval as amended.
Great.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, minutes approved. Thank you. All right, so now we have our public hearing, and I'm going to go ahead and read the procedure for the public hearing because I think everybody might be new out there. The staff will present a report on the history, the physical features on the application, followed by staff's recommendation, and then the applicant will also make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may come up and speak on the proposal, and we have some speaker cards here. When all interested parties have had the opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be heard. The commission will then consider its evidence and make recommendations. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising items that only were addressed by you or somebody else during the public hearing, or by written correspondence to the city prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out the form if anybody else still wants to speak, and hand it to staff prior to speaking. Please be sure to speak into the microphone and to direct your questions to the dais. And it looks like we have 3 speaker cards here on our first item. We do ask that that if you can limit your comments to 5 minutes, that would be great. And if you can also try your best to add new information that hasn't already been heard from a previous speaker, we would appreciate that as well. First item is item A, 260 Shelford Avenue, consideration of a conditional use permit for the proposed modification of an existing wireless telecommunications facility at 260 Shelford. Hi, Lisa.
Good evening, Commissioner. Stephanie Bertolo Davis,
Stephanie,
Senior
I'm
Planner.
sorry.
That's okay. So tonight before you is consideration of a conditional use permit at 260 Shelford Avenue for requested modifications to an existing Sprint wireless telecommunications facility. Here we have a map. I'll give you a brief overview of the site description. The site itself is owned by Cal Water. It's located in a residential zoning district surrounded by existing single-family homes. The parcel itself contains 2 water tanks. Try with the mouse here. Nope. If you can see the red dashed line, the 2 water tanks that I was referring to are right above that. As well as another wireless facility down to the bottom left of those 2 water tanks indicated by a blue dot is the other wireless facility that's located on the site that was completed its construction earlier this year in the form of a disguised monopine tree. The adjacent, but also owned by Cal Water parcel to the north or above those 2 water tanks That also contains an existing wireless facility indicated by that second blue star, again above those two round circled water tanks. The area dashed in red is the approximate location of the Sprint wireless facility from this aerial photograph. The modifications of the facility current conditions contain 2 existing H-frame poles as well as 1 enclosed equipment shelter. So the project requests in front of you tonight for the modifications involve the replacement and upgrading of antenna panels and the addition of some ancillary equipment both on the new panels as well as within the enclosed equipment shelter. These upgrades are to have the facility meet the current industry technologies. They are attempting to utilize the same site versus construction of a new facility to the greatest degree feasible. The modifications themselves specifically involve the installation of 2 new panel antennas on the existing eastern H-frame sign. This results in an overall height increase of approximately 1 foot to the topmost point of the new panel antenna to be installed. The pole height will remain the same. The panels themselves, relative to the existing panels, are approximately 21 inches taller, 1.5 inches wider, and 1/8 of an inch deeper than the existing panel antennas. The addition of 4 what are called radio remote units will be installed on these new antennas. These, what I'll refer to as RRUs, are slightly less than 2 feet wide by 2 feet tall by 9 inches deep, and these allow for greater coverage. On the other existing H-frame on the northern end of the site, H-frame pole, 1 new panel antenna and 2 of those RRUs are to be installed at the same dimensions that I just mentioned. There, again, I mentioned there is an existing enclosed equipment shelter. Within that shelter, 2 of the existing equipment cabinets are to be replaced with 2 new equipment cabinets. On top of that shelter is an existing GPS antenna. That GPS antenna is to be replaced with an updated model at the same height and width. Conditional use permit is required to be granted by the Planning Commission for this request due to its proposed expansion and being located within 600 feet of a residential district, as well as the fact that this site has an existing conditional use permit that was issued in 1998 that requires Planning Commission review for any modifications. Probably best viewed in a hard copy in the packet, but this is an excerpted elevation on the right-hand side. Depicts the existing the existing conditions, while on the left-hand side, the red arrows point to the proposed modifications. Here we go. So on this this is the eastern H-frame pole. Here and here show the 2 new panel antennas proposed to be installed. These 2 arrows indicate the RRU units to be installed on the antennas, while this indicates that GPS antenna that I was mentioning before. This is the existing enclosed equipment shelter and the equipment cabinets inside to be replaced. Another illustration of these improvements, again, probably better viewed from the hard copy, color hard copy, but this is a photo simulation depicting the proposed modifications, probably best illustrating the new panel aesthetic. Here's a new panel here. Here's a new panel here. In terms of the project's compliance with the city's zoning ordinance and general plan, as detailed in the staff report, the proposal as conditioned is found to meet all of the required findings, regulations, and land use policies applicable to modifications of wireless facilities, as well as all pertinent FCC regulations for wireless facility replacements. This particular proposal, again, would utilize the 24-foot tall H-frame poles For the purpose of mounting the proposed replacement antennas and installation of those RRR units, I did mention that would increase the panel height by 1 foot above the existing panels at the topmost point. It would be finished with colors to match the existing conditions. Conditions incorporated into the draft conditional use permit do include the requirement for an updated noise study both prior to building permit issuance as well as post-installation, ongoing monitoring compliance, the ability for future periodic reviews if determined warranted, the cost of the applicant as determined by the city for demonstrated compliance, continued demonstrated compliance with local and federal regulations. Public notice of tonight's meeting was sent to all property owners within 300 feet of the site. The applicant did conduct a public outreach meeting on the site the 23rd of September. The feedback that the applicant shared with staff is detailed in the staff report, summarized here. Concerns expressed by the neighbors that attended as well as via email, which the applicant forwarded to staff and staff included as an attachment within the staff report, had to do with construction timeframe and impacts of the construction with the replacement modifications, post-construction noise impacts, requests to provide notice to the neighbors prior to the commencement of construction. There was insufficient time frame of the notice of the applicant's public notice and extent of the properties who received the meeting invitation. That the site location was unsuitable due to accessibility by some of the neighbors, that the design of the outreach letter was too closely resembling generic mail, that there was insufficient time to respond, and some concerns were expressed with existing maintenance operations of the site currently. With that, it's recommended that the Planning Commission approve the request of Modus Corporation on behalf of Sprint for conditional use permit with proposed modifications of an existing wireless telecommunications facility at 260 Shelford Avenue. With that, I am happy to answer any questions the Commission may have. The applicant is here as well as their engineer who prepared the submitted both RF radio frequency transmission study as well as the noise assessment study.
Does anybody have any questions for Stephanie at this point?
No. Stephanie, one quick question. Were the notices sent in, like, the city envelopes?
I don't believe they were sent in city envelopes.
Don't
City
worry.
did not provide city envelopes. The
Were
applicant
sent, so the fact that the Planning Commission meeting tonight that was sent to 300 feet around the facility, those were not sent by the city?
The city public notice of tonight's meeting was indeed sent in city envelopes, city
Okay.
letterhead,
Okay.
city
So it was the
envelopes. But the
original-
applicant's
Okay.
meeting, I don't know
That was-
exactly what the
okay.
envelope shape took.
That's what I was trying to clarify. So when they're talking about envelopes that look like junk mail, that was the applicant's, not the city's
Correct,
notification.
correct, as was told to us by the applicant.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Stephanie at this point? I don't. Okay. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here? Would the applicant like to come up and speak?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Sarah Hu. I am here as a representative of Sprint. And thank Stephanie for giving that presentation. She gave a really good overview of the project. And just to answer your question about the envelopes, we use business envelopes. We were not aware that we could use city-addressed envelopes. So we had mailing labels, and just to acknowledge that question, that's what we were able to use with the time and resources that we had. But, I am available for any questions, as well as the engineer who prepared the RF and noise assessment reports.
Does anybody have any questions for Cindy at this point?
Did anyone at the community meeting, were you at the community meeting
I was.
Did anyone suggest that there was additional buffering that they were looking for with respect to the site?
Yeah, they had concerns with some of the fencing. I believe they had addressed that with Cal Water. As far as the buffering, that we're open to doing, if it's something that has to do with the antennas, we're open to either landscaping or adding a vinyl covering for the fencing that's already existing. And of course, if there are trees that are damaged in the process or in future and it becomes a visual issue, we are open to installing a new landscape plan.
I know. I have the same question.
Yeah.
There is a heritage oak that has been a concern up in that area, and I tried to walk around with the plans, and I personally just don't have a good gauge of how this might impact that, and I'm wondering if you can help me.
I'm not exactly sure which, you said the heritage oak?
I believe so, or am
Yeah,
I?
I think that, so this is not the first time we've seen this site.
Yeah, of course.
Right, right. There's lots of towers.
Yeah.
And in the previous incarnation of this request,
Not from Sprint, though, I don't believe.
Sprint, but
right.
from another cell phone carrier, there was concern about a heritage oak, but they were actually putting in a new cabinet.
Right.
And so I think the concern was that that new cabinet would damage the roots to the oak tree.
Right.
And it doesn't sound like you're putting in a new cabinet. You're using the existing cabinet.
You're
we have
replacing the existing cabinet.
We have our existing shelter and we
Okay.
have our existing mounting, and we're not going to be removing any of that. So the cabinets are inside the shelter that is already existing.
Oh, I see.
So you're taking things out of the shelter and you're putting new things into the shelter, but
Exactly,
you're not
so-
modifying the shelter in any way.
And we won't be increasing any weight. We're doing a swap of basically one for one.
Is there a roof on the shelter?
There's a roof on the
There's
shelter.
a roof on the shelter. Okay.
One of the residents had requested that there be some notification prior to construction. Is that something that Sprint is able
Yeah,
to do?
that's definitely, and I believe that is outlined in the conditions that we will post a notice. I believe it's 3 days before. I had given those who had reached out to me during the community meeting, they have my access or my contact information, and I'm more than open to discuss this further if they want more
Right.
notice.
And then, and this might be a question for staff also, so forgive me if I'm directing it the wrong way, but there's some concern about the existing maintenance of the site, and I'm just curious who does Cal Water maintain the site as far as, or do the different carriers maintain the site as far as garbage or other issues? Do you guys know?
I don't know. I mean, maybe Stephanie, I don't know if you know, property owner is responsible for
Usually would
that.
be.
So, yeah, and that's usually the case.
Okay.
Unless there were any specific conditions that were previously granted under their original use permit as far as the equipment, but
Right.
they just usually come in and install it and then monitor it on an occasional basis.
Okay.
Is there with the community outreach, does the applicant, and this might be a staff question, does the applicant determine the time, or are there any guidelines on what times they're supposed to, because this was like at 5 p.m., which is during the normal work day, so I don't know, and there's concern that, people couldn't get there if they were at work. Is there anything that stipulates when those can be, or is that just up to the applicant?
That's really up to the applicant. Staff does, provide some suggestions to the applicant, but it has to do with, of course, when the applicant is available and their team in consideration with the likelihood of getting the most attendance out of the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. And then I'm sorry, you said your noise engineer was here as well?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Cindy before I ask the noise engineer?
One more quick one.
Yes.
So it was stated that there were issues with the existing maintenance. is that existing maintenance of your facility or existing maintenance of other?
From what I recall, is more so existing maintenance of the site. Learning most of the history of a Sprint in this site. Whenever there has been concerns with it, we have addressed it. I know in the past there was some noise concerns, and Sprint has done their best to mediate that. So.
But I think there was a condition added to the last proposal.
That's what I was getting at, yeah.
About maintenance of the site, and so I'm a little surprised to hear that there are still issues with the site, because my understanding that those were all supposed to be addressed the last time we saw this site. So I'd like to hear at some point from the residents about what those
continuing
issues still are, and
Okay.
how we can potentially address
Yeah, when I
those.
reference past issues, I think this is from a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I haven't been notified of any current outstanding issues with
Right.
the site.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know some of these clearly are not questions you can answer, but we appreciate you doing that. Any other questions for Cindy before I request the noise engineer? Can the noise engineer come up and speak really quickly?
Sure.
Thank you. Hi there.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is David Oliver. I work with EBI Consulting, and I am not a noise engineer, I'm sorry to tell you.
Oh,
However, I do work with some noise aspects of our work. However, I primarily work with radio frequencies,
Okay.
and I came here to defend the radio frequency study, if you
Okay.
care to do that. But I'm peripherally knowledgeable about noise issues, and I will try to answer any questions you have to the best of my ability.
okay. Does anybody have any questions on the radio frequency study? My very limited understanding of it, it did look like it met the FCC requirements, but beyond that, I certainly couldn't find anything wrong with it, but I didn't know if anybody had any particular questions on that.
I have no specific.
No. I do have, the only reason I specifically wanted to talk about noise was that I noticed that the noise study was done prior to the AT&T installation.
There was a 24-hour noise study completed about a year ago.
Okay.
And so I believe that was before the AT&T installation. And I was reading some of your notes, and apparently you have some kind of a condition that you made earlier that you wanted a new study to incorporate
Correct.
that. So I can defend as much as you like the old report, but if you're requiring a new one,
Nope.
then I
just
imagine
wanted
we
a
will do new one.
clarification of the timeline I just wanted to make it clear that the study was done after the AT&T, so it doesn't include the newest tower on that site.
Correct.
Great. Okay. Thank you. That's the only question I had.
The applicant will be required to do a noise study prior and post installation. Am I correct in that?
According to the conditions we have
Or the
listed, that is
conditions?
correct.
Okay.
Right, Stephanie? Okay.
The second thing is, it looked like there was an increase, and I was still trying to go through the numbers, of about 10 decibels?
No, I think it was 1.3 decibels.
1.3, but then the numbers changed, and all of a sudden it was now at 59 point, and I'm trying to look for exactly where I saw those numbers.
Well, I will tell you, working with radio frequencies, oftentimes we do worst-case modeling. And that's what you do. You try to make it use every possible parameter that, like, the equipment will be on all the time, and it would be as close as possible to somebody's house. And you give it all the worst-case parameters.
Right.
And typically modeling comes out with higher numbers than we actually see once we go out and we do the actual readings in the field.
I see.
So let me read here. For site FS25XC082, the ambient 24-hour sound measurement was 51.7 dBA. at the property line closest to the nearest resident. The post-construction modeling results show a projected noise level of 53.0, representing an increase of 1.3 dBA. But then afterwards, this kind of bothered me. The post-construction calculation of the day-night noise equivalent yielded results of 59.4 dBA LDN, which is in full compliance with the guidelines listed in Table 2. But that's, let's say, 8 dBA increase from the existing level, or am I reading that wrong?
I'm not sure. But I do know that everything that they have modeled, our engineers have modeled, is beneath the 60 dBA limit. And I know that there's different daytime and nighttime limits, and that there's different noise, ambient noise at different times. And so you can expect higher and lower readings at various times of the day or night.
Is that something, Stephanie, that maybe you'd have more understanding of? Scott's question? Or was he reading it correctly? Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Staff is reading it as Commissioner Marsters is reading it, and unfortunately, the noise engineer apparently is not here tonight. We were under the impression that that individual was going to be.
Thank you, Stephanie. Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant at this point, or any follow-up questions for staff before we hear from the public? Okay, well, in that case, I'd like to go
From the staff, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just...
before we hear from the public.
I didn't see anything in the conditional use permit that required notification prior to the beginning of construction. Is there something there that I'm missing?
Condition 21.
21.
A permittee shall provide written notice to city. Courtesy notice shall provide,
Okay, sorry, I
provided
missed
to
it.
residential property.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay. Well, then at this point, I'd like to go ahead and open it up to public comment. And I have 3 speaker cards. If anybody else would like to speak, just go ahead and get a card and bring it to staff. First speaker card I have, and forgive me if my pronunciation is incorrect, is June O. Hello.
Good evening. So my name is June. I live on 21 Anchor Lane, which is down the hill from the proposed site. I might be one of 2 of the closest properties that are next to this antenna. So, this of course is very, it's something that we're very concerned about in our household. Just as a background, I mean, it was mentioned that the AT&T tower was just put in just recently, and it was a long, multi-year, drawn-out process. There was, but finally they did do construction, and they had a tree and a building put in. But that is a lot more equipment now than there was before. So I'm glad to hear that the council is interested in seeing a new noise level study, because there is more out there. From where I am in my driveway, just about 50 feet down below the hill, I could hear the humming as I get into my car. So I don't know how many decibels that is, but it is audible without any special equipment. So the noise level is actually very important to us. Like I said, it was also a long, drawn-out process, and during the appeal that we had to file, we were very encouraged when the city council said that, when you come out and you try to do this big project up there, it'd be nice to get the community together and do an outreach. And the 3-day notice that I received for this the meeting that they talked about on September 23rd really just was not. It may have been to the letter of that, but it really wasn't to the spirit. It was on a Friday. I'm sorry. It was at 5 o'clock. I work, it's hard for me to rush back here and try to make that meeting. Betty, one of our neighbors, she's in her 80s. She can barely get out of a car, and to get up to this steep hill to see the site and have this meeting, she was simply not represented at that meeting. So if it was just in a better facility, it would have been very nice to have that. So when, the noise, like I said, I can hear it already. When the noise studies were done prior with a different company, we noticed that they took the measurements without all of the equipment being turned on and actually taking the reading. One, there's more equipment now, and if they didn't do that, we don't feel like it's really accurate assessment of the noise that's out there. So if we can have that as part of the requirements, when they do the noise, to have it all on and see what really is the worst case scenario, that would be we'd appreciate that quite a bit. And I'm just going to stop with that. It's just, we've gone through this before with just recently, and it was just done. So we're very tired. We hope that you can take into consideration that, there's a lot of construction, there's a lot of business that's being done in our neighborhood that's very quiet. And, if there's a little more consideration to the neighbors, we'd appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thanks.
Next, I have Mark Cohen.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Mark Cohen. I am June's neighbor. I'd actually wrestle him because I think I'm actually closer to the proposed site. So I am as the gentleman said, I am the worst case scenario because I live right down the hill. I have several concerns, and I think June was being very kind and cordial when he said that we are tired because last year we put a lot of effort in to frankly fight against the proposal from AT&T. This council supported the community just to then go back and when threatened by a lawsuit from AT&T, the way I understand it, threatened and then folded and gave in. We were really discouraged by that. I'm here to express similar concerns, the same concerns that I expressed about 2 years ago when the AT&T proposal was in front of you are the same concerns I have now. They include safety. I have 2 children. My daughter is going to be 3 in December, and my son is 17 months. When we continue to increase the amount of power that's being generated on the top of that hill, what is the long-term impact to my children? Do any of you guys have children? Can you say how you'd feel if more power and what types of long-term impact it might have? We might not know. There might not be a study, but you just do the best you can, and it's worrisome. It's very concerning. I'm also concerned when there's construction for their safety. When they did the AT&T construction, I had to direct the au pair that stays with us to not have the children that generally play along Anchor. I had them go someplace else because I was just too concerned about their safety during construction. Noise is a huge issue. I was actually a little encouraged when they said they're going to upgrade their equipment because right now it is very noisy. In fact, when they were putting in the AT&T, I had sent some emails to some of the folks in this building saying, it sounds like there's a lawnmower on the top of the hill. Can somebody check it out? They said Cal Water checked it out. They couldn't find anything. Back and forth several times. And then it was actually somebody from AT&T that mentioned that they could hear something that was on the Sprint site. So I was encouraged that maybe they'll upgrade their facility so it doesn't sound like a lawnmower. Thank you. I was thinking of a grass shredder for some reason. It was coming to my mind. Thank you. But it's noisy. It's really noisy. In fact, I would happily have all of you over, come have some coffee, and we will go take a walk around. And you can see that it does, to June's point, the noise fluctuates because you have different generators going on and off and on and off and on and off. And one of the reasons why we love living up in the hills of San Carlos is the peacefulness. And that peace is being threatened. And last year it was AT&T threatening. This year it's Sprint. Next year it's going to be somebody else, Verizon, and it's just going to continue. And it's just discouraging, especially when we love our neighborhood. It's just discouraging. So noise is an issue. How it's going to impact the environment, talked about this last year. We have deer, we have other wildlife. When you're doing construction, you can't predict how that's going to impact the environment. The heritage oak, is right up for me. We still don't know if AT&T is going to have an impact, their construction, which was a massive construction, is going to have an impact on that root structure. They did have an expert that said, we just don't know, you're just going to have to, so maybe 10 years we'll find out that it did do some damage, and it might fall down, and hopefully nobody's going to be there when it falls. It's just, a lot of these things we can't predict. And then the last thing is aesthetics. So the individual representing Sprint said 1 foot. So you add 1 foot this year. Next year we're going to add another foot, and then another foot after that. And when's it going to stop? I did think AT&T did do a reasonable job trying to sort of mask their towers to make it look like a tree. It's a pretty ugly tree, but I think they did the best they could. Granted. So if there was, aesthetics is definitely an issue. So again, I plead with this council to really, represent the people's concerns here, as I think you will, and put an end to the pattern that is really, really just concerning and discouraging. So, and I thank you for your time and for listening to my concerns.
Thank you, Mark.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I think, and I only speak for myself, I think it's going to be difficult for us to simply tell Sprint no. Is there something in particular that would make this project more tenable to you? As far as it's, you heard from Sprint, they indicated a willingness to try and hide, their particular towers better, if that's something that you're asking for or would be helpful. Is there anything in particular? Obviously, you don't want the project. I get that. But if the project had to happen, are there things that Sprint could do that would make it less disruptive to you?
So thank you for that question. So what I would really like is for Cal Water to remove all of the structures that are there, which are completely unsightly. I don't know how many of you know that facility or that location well, but it's ugly. It's pretty bad. So the AT&T modification was, I guess, a step in the right direction. If something had to be approved, I am encouraged that they want to upgrade their equipment. I would think that an upgrade would be safer, but it sounds like, and I haven't read the details that you did, sir, that talked about it being louder. That actually, is concerning. So I would want it to be softer. It's already very loud. I want it to be less power than more power, because I'm concerned that there is some sort of downstream impact. I just don't know what it is. I can't predict it. There's some studies when we were talking about the AT&T plan. I did some research on cell phone towers and high intensity. I don't know if it's microwaves. I'm not an expert, but there was some just varying data. There's some data in Europe that suggested some cancer risk. I don't know. Nothing's conclusive. Obviously, the FCC has their guidelines for a reason, but we just don't know. What would I want? I don't want it to be higher. I don't want it to be louder, and I don't want it to be more power. I'd like it to all go away, and for my family to live in peace and safety, like I'm sure all of you want. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it's definitely responsive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
And last, it looks like I have Michael Opalanik. Did I completely mess that up, Michael? Opalanik? Okay. Stop saying my name wrong. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Well, my little thumb drive's getting loaded up here.
We have a spot for it, right?
Okay.
You can actually just plug it right in.
Okay.
It'll go, and then we can, let's just, let's see, and show, and let's see where yours were all. You just want to, we don't want to import.
And Michael, we did receive your letter also, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. While she's doing that,
Okay, so,
Mr. Marston, yes, there's two things about the letter that was sent by the applicant. One, I'll take a look at.
is this your information?
Yes.
I believe on the
Click
second
on it.
page of what I had
Okay,
given you
great.
guys, it shows the letter from the
A lot of the property owners have changed, and from my understanding, the Planning Commission uses the list off of the property taxes. So if someone got that and there was a different name on it, it would have just gotten tossed. There's no return address on it. There's no nothing whatsoever. So I was really disappointed in the community meeting when I received that. I'm also doubly disappointed because a couple council members were here before, and when we did the whole AT&T thing and the big, too much drama involved in that, and it shouldn't have gotten that far. It should have stayed right here, and we should have resolved it with the Planning Commission.
Fair point.
And the City Council had some very unkind words to say about the type of community outreach that we received the second time. And I was sort of outraged that we got that kind of response after the mayor and the City Council said, hey, listen, this is sort of a sham. You're really cutting the public out from participating in this process. So I just wanted to comment on that before I started my presentation. I want to start by saying that Sprint has been up there for a long time. They've been just not a really good neighbor and not a very good tenant up there for Cal Water. They've done a lot of work up there without permits, and we would like Sprint to comply with their current conditional use permit before issuing any new conditional use permit for them. This is just one of many pictures of a lot of the construction that's gone on up there. Let's see, how do I get back out of this? Do I just close it? Okay. City's been notified many times. Contractors should have been applied for permits for vents and conditioning units, all kinds of things. Guess what? As of last Friday, no plans, no permits, no nothing, electrical work, air conditioning units, all kinds of different things. So they haven't complied with their existing conditional use permit, and now we're here considering a new conditional use permit for them. I appreciate staff. I'm going to go down here. I appreciate staff asking for a second noise assessment and knowing that the other one was a year old. We would request that all the equipment be turned on for that second test. So we really have a real live understanding of what the noise. We have AT&T up there, we have T-Mobile, we have Verizon, we have all this equipment, and just to go up there and stick a microphone at any given time wouldn't make any sense. You're going to do your second noise assessment, it's going to be wintertime. As far as I'm concerned, air conditioners don't come on in the wintertime. I don't know, my house they don't. So unless they're forcibly turned on, you're not going to get a real sound assessment. Mr. Marster, I really appreciate, Commissioner Marster, your understanding of the sound issues we have up there. And the 59.4 decibels that they're saying for day and night average, it's that close to 60, which is the city limit. Now, if you add on that and we go back to the whole AT&T problem we had and their cell tower, during that whole process, in the noise element in San Carlos, there's a little stipulation in there for when there's reoccurring impulsive noises, like we get up there, like an industrial site where fans are going on and off, all kinds of different. There's actually a 5 decibel deduction from that 60, making it 55. So currently, if their report is correct, they're not in compliance with the noise code in the city of San Carlos by admission of their own report. I don't understand. I just don't understand that. I know that the RF guy is here, and I'm glad he's here because I'd like to have him answer a question for me.
Oh, if you can direct it to us,
Yeah,
I'll have him come back up and answer for you.
He seemed to have taken all of his measurements at ground level, but the antennas up there, and most of you have been to the site up there, are pointed down at our houses and over the roofs. I'd like to see the RF study done either, in the front of our houses where we live in Anchor Lane, or where the antennas are pointing, because if you stand underneath there, you're not really going to get a true measurement. So I'd like the Planning Commission to consider that also. Now, the community disagrees with the safety and intent of Sprint's application for construction in our neighborhood. The plans say that they're 100% ready. Yet, on your plans, if you look at your plans, up in the corner, the current antenna structure, they've got the new standards are G. The safety standards, I can scroll down here. The safety standards they've got on the plans in front of you that are ready to be approved are 17 years old. And that's life safety code. That's for earthquake, wind, all kinds of stuff. And these plans are supposedly 100% ready to go. We're going to stamp them by the building department. We're going to just do the work. Something's not quite right. I really feel this should go back to planning, back to the applicant for some further review. There's a lot of discrepancies here. The most telling thing here, well, unfortunately it's a little compressed. Here's the original plans for the tower that's up there right now. The original tower is 20 feet 6 inches. The plan shows a 20-foot tower, 24-foot tower in your report, and a height of exactly 25 feet, which puts it above the tree line, which is aesthetically not pleasing to us whatsoever. But where are they going to get the extra 4 feet? Are they going to tear the tower down once it goes to building? Are they going to tear it down, put new poles up? I have no idea where the extra 4 feet are going to come from. Here's Sprint's current plan. There's what they've got there. 24-foot tower doesn't exist according to the public record. So I'd like to really take a look at this, and it's riddled with flaws. And all we ask is we want to keep it within the Planning Commission and have it done right here. It should be done right here. It shouldn't have to bother the city council with stuff like this. And it's a hassle for the city. It's a hassle for us. We really don't want to have to go through that again. So in conclusion, we really welcome Sprint's upgrade and enhancements of the additional ground screening they want to do and other things like the fencing and other things that they want to do. However, the plan is error-ridden way beyond what I've discussed here. There's a lot more in there than just these few things. In addition, Sprint's current installation is unsightly and out of date and out of character with our community and other cell providers like AT&T put up that nice tree. We're pretty happy with that, but we shouldn't have had to fight for that tree. It should have been all decided here. The tree should have gone up. We're all happy with it. We're asking the commission to stay here. Let us, have another community outreach meeting. Let's have some better plans. And Councilmember Silverman, I'd like to answer your question that you addressed earlier. What could they do? Reduce the sound levels up there and get real life sound evaluations done with all the equipment turned on and find out what the modeling really is up there. Second of all, as much camouflage as they can do. Stick some tree branches up there. Do something to make sure that that tower, and I could show you another picture, that it sticks up above the trees. 5 more feet, everybody's going to see it. It's going to be an eyesore. Shouldn't have to happen. That's all I've got. So.
Thank you very much, Michael. At this point, I have no further public comment cards. So what I'd like to do is to offer the applicant and or staff, I'm not sure which would be the best way to respond to some of those concerns that were raised during public comment. In particular, I have just a couple of notes, and if you guys can help me out for some of the other ones. Is Sprint currently in violation of its current CUP? Is that something we know? That was just something brought up during public comment, so I want to make sure that I'm
They're
addressing
currently
this.
not in violation of their existing use permit.
Okay, thank you. So has there been work done without permits and or just that work just didn't require permits?
I can't confirm that. I mean, we all saw the email that
Right.
was shown on the screen by the building official, Chris Valley. So it looks like there may have been some work.
Okay.
Whether that work required a permit from
Right.
the city or not, we'd have to confirm that with the building official.
Okay.
But we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Lisa. Sorry, I'm trying to look through my notes and make sure I got everything.
Can I
Yes,
add one
please.
in?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So every time construction is done on one of these, there is a pre and post noise study that is required. Why has not a post noise study been done by AT&T?
I don't, Commissioner Marsters, I don't have the AT&T details of the project and the requirements of that conditional use permit that was granted. There probably, I would imagine, without having it in front of me, I would imagine that the condition probably sets timeframes for which that needs to be completed by. I apologize to the commission. Because that's not the project we're discussing tonight, I don't have the details of those conditions of approval.
Thank you, Lisa. The last speaker, Michael, also noted the life safety code. Is that out of date, or was that a misprint on the plans?
I can't confirm that. That may be something that the project applicant, we could ask the project applicant perhaps.
Cindy, would you like to come up?
But just to clarify through the chair that what was being requested today is an application for a use permit, and when the project is submitted before the building division, all the current requirements would be checked at that point. But perhaps the applicant can speak to that.
Thank you for that clarification, Lisa. Cindy, can you come up? And Cindy, I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to address some of the concerns that were brought up by public comment.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
there's anything in particular you wanted to say after hearing that.
Yeah, so like you said, once we submit for a building permit, these are preliminary design drawings that are supposed to be focused on design. And once we submit for final construction, we are going to be in full compliance with current code. And that, as far as, I guess, work that has been done on the site in the past, Sprint has access to their site, and if they need access to it, or if there's problems with it, they go on site and they make adjustments. To date, I don't believe any work has been done without permits. What they have done is on site, and whether it's routine maintenance that they need to do, but usually that is within the equipment area with the antennas. So. But as far as replacing, swapping antennas, that's something that we've been in compliance with in the past.
Does anybody have any other follow-up questions for Cindy while she's up here,
No.
based on public comment?
I have it for the RF engineer.
Does Sprint have like a timeline that it's concerned about? Would it be a problem to go back and have another community meeting with more, providing the community a little more time to make themselves available and speak to Sprint? Would that be a problem with anything that Sprint's planning on doing?
I mean, I am available to the community for whatever questions they may have. I know I've spoken with Michael on a constant basis, and I've been responsive to him on the questions that he's had. As far as another community meeting, it's definitely something that we're open to. It was unfortunate that people weren't able to attend the meeting. I was hoping to do it at a time, and with the limitations and resources that we had a very small time frame of when we can host this meeting. And I've done meetings in the past, and what I found is having a meeting in a facility like a library or a conference room, you look at the set of plans, and I thought it would be an advantage to have it on site where people could actually see the site and have a look around and voice their concerns. And I have since tried to address some of their concerns that they've had. And
I just wanted to see something
Yes.
real quick. I think my only concern was not
Sure.
so much the location, although I can understand.
Yeah, that
to the
makes-
extent
yeah,
that,
mhm.
you know,
Of course.
it
That makes sense.
It makes sense, but
Okay.
I mean, I think the concern that was raised that folks received this just a couple of days before the meeting, although it looks like it was mailed on the 13th for a meeting on the 23rd.
I think one of the other concerns was that because there's no return address, if people had since moved, there was no real way to, I guess,
were
notice
all
them.
of the concerns that Michael raised today, or were these concerns that he's raised with you already?
Yes, yes.
All of them?
For the most part, yes. I mean, I was there on site for about 45 minutes, and we had a discussion about what he's been concerned with in the past, and then some of the most recent with AT&T, with Cal Water. I have since had a conversation with Cal Water about some of their concerns about maintenance, and I believe there's been discussion about a fence, which is something that Cal Water has been open to. So it's just a matter of Sprint and Cal Water working together, if that's something that they would like to see in the future.
I just have one more question. What about the discrepancy in height? Michael had mentioned that it's 20 feet 9 inches, but that the plans say that it's 24. And Cindy, maybe you're not the right one to ask. I'm sorry if that's not the case, but you've done the measurements, I assume, of the current tower?
These drawings have been taken from as-built from what he presented with. As far as the additional height, I mean, this just might be a matter of red lines in the drawings, and as far as when we proceed with building permits, we can make these.
It would be addressed at that.
Addressed, and if the antennas need to be lowered, that's something we can address at the time too. As of right now, they're not exceeding the mounts, so if that's something we need to look into, definitely.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other questions for Cindy at this point?
I just a comment. I just think that putting your return address or who the correspondence is from would be a basic thing that you'd want to do. To not do that for the community, I don't think that sends a very good message. Just a return label.
Okay, yeah, I can take that into consideration for next time.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. And then at this point, does anybody have any additional questions for staff at this point before we move on?
Just for the noise.
Yeah.
For the
Oh,
RF
for the RF
Yeah.
engineer? I'm sorry, David, can you come on back up? Thank you. And remember, David is not a noise engineer.
Yeah, I'm
even
sorry.
even though I keep trying to make him one.
RF engineer.
Yes.
Could you respond to the community regarding the measurement of the RF in front of the houses versus where they took the measurement from? And could you also speak generally on what your report says as far as the change in the RF pattern?
Okay, typically, what we have here is we have antennas that are low power and high gain. That means they are focused in one direction, and so they are aimed at about maybe a 70, 80 degree field. And there's not a lot of fields behind them, above them, directly below them. But as you move away from them in the direction that they are pointing, you will get fields on the ground, and as you go, there will be additional fields in that direction. However, due to the very low power nature of these, the transmitters are only 20 watts. And a typical like AM radio station is 50,000 watts. It's very low power in comparison. And the signal, the strength of the signal attenuates very rapidly. And so typically within just a few feet in front of these antennas, you are no longer within the FCC limits of the maximum permissible exposure limits. And so on the ground in front of them, a number just a few feet in front is as close as you're going to get, and those are about the highest readings you are going to get. Now, as you move farther away, you will have some readings, but they diminish very rapidly. We do sometimes take readings at people's homes when they are concerned. Possibly after these are installed, we could go to people's homes and coordinate with them As a matter of fact, I am doing that for another client tomorrow.
Okay.
And so this is not an unusual request because it's people are concerned because it's invisible, and it's something that's makes you nervous. And so we are in the business of putting people's fears to rest, and we would be happy to take readings if it is required.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions for David while we have him up here? No? Okay, thank you, David.
Certainly.
At this point, I was hoping that Greg could clarify for us, particularly for those of us who are new to the commission, what our role is in sort of the FCC Telecommunications Act. I did, of course, read it in the staff meeting, but it's been my understanding that we are limited to, our purview is a bit limited when it comes to cell phone, these towers and how we approve or disapprove of a CUP. And so I guess I just wanted a clarification from Greg on that.
Thank you. Actually, there's been some changes in law since the last antenna that we've had.
Well.
Further taking away local authority
Of course.
to try to regulate these antennas in our local communities. One of the rules is Section 6409, and it talks about co-location projects like this one. And there's a 90-day shot clock from completion. That's in the staff report. But what they've added is some really tight language that is designed to take away discretion from local agencies regarding these co-location antennas. And I'll read it because it's amazing that this is the law, but it is the law. It's part of the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012. Section 6409A of the Tax Act provides that a state or local government, quote, may not deny, comma, and shall approve, unquote, any request for co-location removal or replacement of transmission equipment on existing wireless tower or base station, provided the action does not substantially change the physical dimensions of the tower or the base station. Physical substantial change has been, although this isn't the law, but it's a guidance from the FCC in a letter from January of this year, 2013, 10% variance or 20 feet, whichever is greater. So this is obviously contemplating a really tall antenna. This is more than 10%, that 3 feet in height increase, but it's not 20 feet. And the 20 feet is designed to accommodate another panel, basically. You can add another panel to the height of a co-located antenna without running afoul of the act. And then they talk about new equipment cabinets. Up to 4 seem to be allowed under the act. We're using an existing facility here, so that doesn't really apply. But theoretically, someone could come in on a co-location, add another panel, and add some more cabinets, and we would have very little discretion. What the city's trying to apply is its use permit standards, which includes a lot of standards like noise, and I'm calling them general health and safety, like building code, like noise. So we're putting conditions. I'm satisfied with what we've developed over the past few years in our antenna ordinance and applying the city's noise ordinance. Those are the standards that we can apply. They're part of our local law. But as far as RF emissions, they've already taken that away. We still have some aesthetic approval. It's unclear whether this new law that was passed last year even takes the aesthetics away from us on a co-location that does not affect substantial change. So my advice would be to try and focus on what the applicant's willing to do. I heard some comments about what they're willing to do to camouflage the antenna. I didn't hear a lot of testimony about changing the antenna, but colors and things of that nature I think would be something that the applicant might be willing to include either as a condition or just something they'll agree to do. So I don't have really great news on the legal front. The FCC is really constraining local government's ability to regulate these types of facilities. And the design of these laws is to encourage more of the same.
Right.
I mean, it's to encourage more of this type of technology. And it would be nice if they would try to give us some discretion, but they're not. They're tightening it up.
Okay. I guess a follow-up question that might be unfair and you might not be able to answer, but certainly because co-location tends to be preferred even in our own plan, that does bring up a particular burden for anybody who lives near an existing tower, because there is going to be, Mark Cohen wasn't wrong in the sense that there is probably going to be continued upgrading, shall we say, of, I guess my point is what recourse do the neighbors have if now it's Sprint and then it's Verizon and then it's T-Mobile and then it's whatnot?
Well, some of the things that we're trying to accomplish with our code is having this use permit requirement that goes to the Planning Commission so that the public can raise their concerns about any particular project. It serves a couple of purposes. One is to possibly develop the conditions of approval consistent with what we've been doing for the last few years. The second is to see if the provider is willing to add voluntary conditions through this process. I think that's helpful, and it has happened on occasion. But we just we if there's something that's outside of the this 20 feet or these standards that the FCC has proposed, we start to get into building code issues that I think if somebody just comes in, I want to add a 20-foot to a pole that's there. Well, we're going to look at the pole and we're going to say, well, you can't add a 20-foot panel to that. It's not going to pass muster for engineering or building code issues. So we certainly have those types of things if there's substantial change. And when that happens, when the pole needs to be replaced, then we start to get into the other provisions of our code where aesthetics will definitely be in play, and which is similar to what happened with the AT&T matter, that where we could start to have camouflaged monopines and monopalms and things of that nature.
So here's a question then. I guess based on based on some of the comments that the commission's already made in response to the public comment, knowing that some of the public outreach, I think some of the commissioners feel maybe wasn't adequate, and then I had also heard that, and also the noise engineer, Stephanie had mentioned we thought he'd be here and he isn't. Are we allowed to continue this item, but not beyond 90 days? I mean, the staff has done the report. What's our timeline look like for something like that?
Yeah, I asked that question. I think the application was deemed complete earlier this month, so there is some time to continue that. But in an abundance of caution, I'd like the applicant to come up and agree to a continuance.
Sure. Okay.
To a date certain.
And again, I'm not even suggesting that's what you guys want to do. I just wanted to raise the question. Thank you very much, Greg. And thank you, everybody. So at this point, I guess I wanted to open it up to you guys and see what...
Let's close the public meeting.
Yeah.
Well, before, can we get the applicant to come up and tell us whether they'd accept a continuance and when they believe the 90 days runs? Can we ask them that?
Sure. Cindy, why don't you come on up and answer that? Oh, it's okay.
And I was going to ask a follow-up question for Greg as well.
Do you want to start with the follow-up question?
No, it's quite all right.
Okay. We've had our application with the city for about a year now. First with a different planner who reviewed the site, and we've gone through constant revisions and plan check comments, which we try to make adjustments to our plans and our reports. So we've had this for over a year, and we would like this to move forward. I know there's a lot of issues with the noise, and when we had submitted a year ago, AT&T and Verizon weren't there. And at the time, if we had moved forward then, it would have fully complied. So, I mean, we've added the condition that we will do a revised noise assessment of the site with AT&T and with Verizon, and so I would request not to do a continuance if this is something that we would be able to move forward with. And I think as we move forward with this building process, we'll comply with the codes, we'll comply with the noise assessment, and as conditioned, if the noise assessment deems beyond FCC standards, that we would come back to the Planning Commission. And so.
What is your position on when your application was complete? What was the date that your application was complete?
The date that the application was complete, as far as recommendations for approval by the planning staff, or?
No, there's apparently a 90-day rule, and it runs from the time your application is complete. What is your position as to when your application
Well,
is
as far as
complete?
our application was complete, I mean, we, as Sprint, would deem it complete the minute we submitted it. So, August of 2012. And we've been in this process for about a year now, so.
Greg, when would you deem it complete?
Well, I think we're talking, it's kind of a term of art. The city determines when an application is complete. I was trying to accommodate just the schedule of the applicant, really. We calculate the 90 days to run sometime from the early October, so what would be early January would be when the 90 days run. So there should be plenty of time. But we don't have a lot of meetings in December, so, I mean, obviously, I think it would be appropriate, given that timeline, to be able to continue at one time if that's what the commission would like to do. But I just on just a cautionary note, because of the constraints of the code, the continuance really needs to be to gather any information you don't have. For instance, we don't have the sound engineer here, so that might be something you'd want to make sure that the sound engineer is available for your next meeting where you'd consider it. And if we don't really have the ability to force somebody to have a community meeting, but it's strongly suggested by staff in these types of cases. So.
Here's another question. I'm sorry, David.
You're the chair.
Could we? Yeah, why am I sorry? Could we require that a noise study be done before we hear it again? The pre and post noise study that we're talking about. Could we require that the pre-study be done before we hear it again? I'm not necessarily saying that's what we'd want to do. I just want to know if we can.
My understanding, and staff can correct me on this, is that there's both a before and an after noise study. Maybe I want to make sure I understand the condition. I did look at it earlier.
That is correct. We require a noise study, to evaluate the existing conditions as they exist, and then in conjunction with the proposed modifications. And then there's typically an additional condition that we require, as Commissioner Marsters noted, for the AT&T project, that they come back and provide us with some updates as post-construction.
Well, the concern I have is that I don't think our ordinance requires it. I think it's a condition of approval, but we do that to confirm the the baseline numbers. I think you can give staff some direction vis-a-vis some of the comments that we've heard from the public to make sure that the study contemplates the full all the equipment running,
all the equipment being turned on,
or seasonally, that you want to make sure they're more valid. I think those are some reasonable points that if air conditioning units aren't going to be running, you might want to time your study so that you're going to have a good chance of gathering or having the circumstance when all of the equipment is running and cooling at the same time, like on a hot evening or something. that's something you might want to modify the conditions, the 45
Okay.
days might not work because of some of those concerns.
And again, I'm not suggesting that we continue it. I just wanted to know what we could do because again, unless we're going to get new information, I don't know that would even be beneficial.
We can't ask
but-
the noise engineer how the study was completed because the noise engineer isn't here.
Yeah,
Right.
why isn't the noise engineer here?
I also thought he would be here today. We usually, when we come to these meetings, we bring an RF engineer. Noise assessments hasn't been as typical for most jurisdictions, so I'll have to check to see if there's somebody local that can come and attend the meeting. And
Okay. Thank you. David, I'm sorry I cut you off.
Yeah, so my question's for Greg. I think I understand, but I just wanted to clarify. So it sounds like, say we wanted to say it can't be any taller than it is right now. It sounds like we couldn't do that. Is that fair?
That's right. It's because it wouldn't be a substantial increase.
And if we wanted to say can't be more power than it is right now, we couldn't do that as long as it was within FCC regulations, right?
That's correct.
So the only one that that seems like it could conceivably be left, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me we can't do that either, is that we can't limit it to its current sound as long as it continues to be under our noise ordinance. Is that correct?
That's what our noise ordinance is supposed to do, but it sounds like this one, the theoretical study you have, has it really close to the line.
Well, it does, and we don't, because the noise engineer isn't here, we don't know how they actually conducted the noise study.
But
Or
the
if we're
condition
even
you
reading
can-
it correctly.
But the conditions that we have are designed to make sure and ensure compliance with the city's noise ordinance. So there's going to be a problem if the as-built project exceeds the noise.
So we could say we wanted to go forward today, we could condition, actually I should ask, could we condition the permit on them completing the noise study after completion with everything turned on at the same time, and then if it was over 60, they would have to come back and they would have some trouble?
It might require some fine-tuning, and again, I'm not a sound engineer, but we'd have to make sure that this particular piece of equipment is what's putting it over the top. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's...
So how do we know that it's not over the top right now?
Well,
I mean, we'd be approving something without an existing noise study, okay, that tells us that it's under 60 decibels. How do we know that we're not approving something that's already over 60 decibels?
Well, in our other permits, we have some ability to go back to the other providers to say it's over, the site is over the sound limit. So collectively, you're all going to have to fix this, because then that puts it into the municipal code enforcement side of it. It's not simply approval of a project. So I know maybe that's not a satisfactory answer, Commissioner Marsters, but if we have the evidence that the site is over the 60 decibels, it becomes a nuisance per se under our code. You have to be under the sound limits. So,
And
but I'm just to clarify my point. There's a theoretical or a hypothetical that you could construct that it's over 60 dBs now, and they're putting in the quietest piece of equipment that's
Sure.
technically feasible, and it's not really adding to the sound. It wouldn't be. We wouldn't really have a good basis to say your little 1/10 of a decibel means that you can't put yours in because all the noise of all the other ones. That's the concern.
And you're saying we would have recourse for the other
We would have
providers
recourse
to
under our
reduce
existing
their
use
sound?
permits for the others, and we'd have recourse under our municipal code for the violation of the noise ordinance.
I'm sorry, Cindy, did you have a comment quickly on that particular
yeah, I just
point?
wanted to note that in the report, they take existing conditions and they monitor and they do theoretical modeling for the proposed noise.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Shannon, you had something.
We would know if we do the pre-noise assessment, then we're going to know what the baseline is. So we'll know if their equipment on the post actually was what caused the issue, if there is an issue. Right.
the,
I mean, if it's if we do a pre and it's over 60, we already have a problem, right?
then we've already
Yeah.
approved the project.
But then the other providers have to come down too, and it doesn't just apply to Sprint.
Do the other
But no, but-
providers have to come down if, say, it's 59.8? Okay, and so it's below the 60, but now we know they're going to add 1.5 decibels. That's going to throw them over. Who ends up being the person who has to give? Because they're not providing equipment right now that is going to be quieter. They're providing equipment that's going to be noisier than their existing equipment, because theoretically they've shown that the number is higher. I'm not saying that I wouldn't down the road approve this, but I'm just feeling like, for me, I would rather see that noise study in
Right
hand before I say yes.
But Greg's saying the ordinance doesn't require that.
Can't we require it as, well,
The
Condition of approval, but then you got to approve.
Already is.
you're basically saying you need more information, and that's, I have recommended that the commission can do that in the past, saying, hey, I need more information before I can make the findings for approval. It's not required by our ordinance, but by the same token, if it's something you need in order to make the findings for approval, it's something I think you could do. And the problem just is we've got this shot clock and this new law. The whole area of where you're talking right now hasn't really been tested in the courts, whether the sound issue, because of the way it says shall approve,
Right.
it's not entirely clear how much we could justify a denial based on noise.
Can a pre-noise study be done within 90 days?
Through the chair, I think you were asking staff that, but I would just
Oh,
redirect
I'm
that.
sorry.
To, I would just redirect that to
Cindy.
the applicant to see if they could meet that time frame.
Yes, if that's something that would need to be done, we would definitely want to turn this around. I just want to note, though, that this noise assessment, that it's taking, I guess, the comprehensive site. It's not just assessing the Sprint equipment. It is what we have right now is a 24-hour report of on-site, whether equipments were on or on. I mean, it is supposed to be a typical day of what it.
Right, but it's a typical day a year ago before the AT&T tower was built, correct?
Exactly, and if and as condition, we are open to doing a new report. So
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Okay.
Can I just add one other thing?
Yes.
I think we might be able to help because I think AT&T has the exact same condition, and it's supposed to. We're supposed to have a study that was done 45 days after. We may have such a study in hand already if AT&T did what they were supposed to do in regard to their conditions.
Right.
Because theoretically that would be the current conditions with their
Right.
facility in place. So I think I talked with Lisa earlier. It might be in that file. It's just not something that's part of this application. So it's probably a good point that if we have a succession of antenna proposals, we might even have the previous post-installation sound study that could be available as part of your packet.
So would it be a good idea then for us to continue this, and then that would give staff time to find out if AT&T has done the study, and then we can go ahead and consider that?
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if we were to continue it for like 4 weeks. That's 28 days. They've only got 45 days to have completed that study.
Yes, that's
So
probably
if it sounds like from the neighbors out there that it was completed a while ago, so if it hasn't been done, it should be done within the next 4 weeks, I would say.
So do I go ahead and get a motion for to continue the item?
Yeah, you don't want to close the public hearing yet because I
Right,
think you
that's what
want
I was
to have
thinking.
the public have some
Right.
comment at a future meeting. And then I think you'd want to have the flexibility for staff to be able to ask for a study in case the AT&T study won't be ready in time.
Right.
And supplement, because apparently everything's there. This study that you've got in your staff report just doesn't include the AT&T site, so hopefully it's not too big of a thing that you're asking for just to add this component to their study. But you'd want to make sure that before the next meeting you've got the information that you need. I think that's the idea.
Okay.
Well, and I'd also observe, and I, honestly, again, the sound engineer isn't here, so we can't ask, but according to the public comment we got, it sounds like it's noisier in the summer because of the air conditioners, and this was done October 28th of 2012. Presumably there wasn't a lot of air conditioning necessary at that time, but I mean, I assume the sound engineer will be able to answer those questions. I just observed that because if the other study that AT&T did was in the summer, well, then that problem is taken care of. But if it wasn't, if it was, I mean, I don't know when they would have done it, but then we'd have that same problem.
So I would suggest that you, to the extent it's possible, that the engineers should be able to figure this out and figure out what the maximum sound of all the equipment is, coupling that with actual data numbers and give you a realistic number of the conditions, and you still have the protection of the post installation sound study that's still going to be required that will enable you to see what the actual conditions are, and that's the one you could time. You could vary the standard condition and say we want that one done in July or something like that, so that you have a higher probability, or maybe even September because we have warm Septembers here.
Right.
You could time it so that it will be done at a time when you think there'll be a warm day.
In that case, then, can I entertain a motion to continue, or how
One
would I
more
best do this?
discussion
Sure.
point, and that is, I heard from the neighbors that visual impacts, and I wondered if we could request sort of a landscaping plan for hiding the antennas or the cabinets, and I'm not sure which needs to be done, but maybe the applicant can sort of work with the neighbors and look and see if a couple of trees could be planted or a couple of bushes could be planted that kind of hide the cabinet or the antennas a little bit more, recognizing that we don't want to block the antennas from their function.
Right.
But how do we make this a little bit more palatable to the residents that live there?
I'd agree, and to track the municipal code to be, are there any additional measures that would make the facility not readily visible pursuant to section 18.24.06 of the San Carlos Ordinance Code, Municipal Code, excuse me.
Okay, yeah, I'd say we should do that. Any other discussion points before somebody offers a motion to continue? Okay, can I go ahead and entertain a motion to continue this item?
I'll move to continue it to a date certain. Can we have a recommended date from staff?
4 weeks? 4 weeks from, 4 weeks from today would be November 19th. 18th, November 18th.
November 18th?
Okay. I'm just trying to think. Thanksgiving is the following week?
10 days later.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I would move that this matter be continued to November the 18th.
Okay.
At 7 p.m.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we need to provide the direction, or have we given you enough direction to both the applicant and staff? Do we need to put any of that into the
motion. Into the motion?
into the motion to continue?
It's not necessary to put it in the motion, but you might want to clarify that that's the type of information you would like to have so that you can review and make the appropriate findings. it's sort of a, if the applicant provides it, that's great. If they don't, then you'll have to consider that. So.
May I make a modification to my motion then?
Yes.
Okay, so I would move that this matter be continued to November 18th at 7 p.m. And that at that meeting we be provided additional information regarding the status of noise studies and have a noise engineer available, as well as additional information on whether there are additional measures that would make the facility not readily visible.
Can I have a second to that?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. This motion is, or this item is continued. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so item B in our public hearing is the consideration of the zoning ordinance amendments to the San Carlos zoning ordinance Title 18 of the San Carlos Municipal Code to amend Chapter 18.22 sign ordinance pertaining to billboard on city property. And now it's Lisa.
Good evening.
Hi.
Lisa Costa-Sanders, Principal Planner. The item before you is an ordinance amending San Carlos Municipal Code Chapter 18.22, and that provides regulations for signs within the city limits. The zoning ordinance amendment is necessary to update the sign ordinance regulations relating to billboards on city property, and that is to further the City Council's strategic objective for a city lease billboard to ensure the long-term financial sustainability of the city. The item before the Planning Commission this evening is a recommendation to the City Council, and that is for revisions to Chapter 18.22 to permit billboards on city property. Staff is also working on an update to Chapter 12.28, and as that is not in the zoning ordinance section, that does not require Planning Commission review before City Council action, but that also regulates the signs in the public right-of-way and on public property. And the amendments together of both of those chapters would provide for internal code consistency to permit billboards on city properties. The code updates would allow billboards on city property with Planning Commission issuance of a sign permit for design review. The provisions of the code as recommended would limit the height of any new billboards to 55 feet, limit the billboard to two-sided, with each sign face no larger than 672 square feet in area. The code update also includes two new findings for the Planning Commission prior to approving the sign permit. One finding would be that the billboard is consistent with any state or federal regulations, and the second that the billboard is freeway oriented. If the ordinance is adopted by the City Council, if you were to recommend it to the City Council and they were to adopt it, any new billboard as indicated would need to come before the Planning Commission for design review. It would also require an agreement with the City Council to be located on city property. It is recommended that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution recommending the City Council adopt an ordinance to amend Section 18.2 relating to signs. I'd be happy to try to answer any of your questions, as well as City Attorney Greg Rubens.
Does anybody have any questions for Lisa at this point about the sign ordinance changes?
So where are billboards, these billboards suggest, are these the ones that are near 101, or is this just billboards in general, or is that, I'm not clear on where that's allowed in the city?
Right, it would only be allowed on city property, would
Okay.
be the first, and then the second is that a finding that it be freeway oriented.
Okay.
So ideally it'd be along that 101 corridor.
Okay, thank you.
And the other piece is that there needs to be an agreement, since it's on city property, there has to be some sort of a lease agreement with the city that would be negotiated by the City Council. And as the current code's written, a relocation agreement's required. I take the second part back. Under the current
We
code,
had
it's
several
required.
options we were considering.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure I understand, Lisa. So this is a clarification to our existing sign ordinance because we do allow billboards on private property.
No, we do not. They're
We do not.
prohibited.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it would
Got it.
only permit new
Got it.
billboards on city
Okay.
property only.
All right. I misunderstood that.
lawsuit about
Thank,
that, actually.
thank you.
Yes, It's an important clarification.
Yes, thank you. Any other clarifications or questions for Lisa?
So I have a question about the height of 55 feet and a concern that the billboard may be seen from residential areas, in particular the New Transit Village, which is now going to sit at 50 feet, all of those buildings, and they will look over and will now see this particular billboard. So my concern is that the orientation of this be done in such a way that it doesn't impact any residential properties. I went down to Branston and looked, and I think it can be done, but the concern is that really in here there's nothing that talks about the impact to any of the residential, either the nearby residential neighborhood or any new residential neighborhoods that come along.
So you're looking for clarification
I
in the
think-
ordinance, not specific to Branston, though.
Yeah, and I
Of course,
think
'cause we're not
Yes.
my
considering
concern
that.
on that is it could certainly be visible from the hillside homes. And so at what point, do we have that? With the application that is pending, which is for a new billboard at the end of Branston Freeway oriented, we did have a visual simulation. An environmental CEQA analysis was completed through the mitigated negative declaration document to assess that visual impact. But there may be some vantage point where somebody could see it from the hillside. I mean, you can see the whole Bay Area from some of those
Yes.
hillside homes.
Yeah.
So it may be difficult to have some standards in there. It might be something better to be handled through the discretionary planning commission design review process.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at so I looked at a couple of things in chapter 18.22 signs.
Can you give me a page number real quick? So I can follow
Well, it
along?
says page 1 on it, and then
Okay.
page 2, but it's probably about 5 pages in. It says signs underneath chapter 18.22.
It's the attachment to the resolution, Exhibit A. So you have page 1 then of Exhibit A?
Yeah,
Got it.
and so my first I went to page 2 where it says the purpose of the ordinance is to protect the peaceful, quiet residential nature of neighborhoods from intrusion or degradation by inappropriate commercial signage. And my concern is that if you've got a flashing 55-foot sign, that is going to be and that can be seen from a nearby residential area, that is an intrusion on the peaceful, quiet residential nature. And so the other issue I have with it is I look at my guess is it's going to be similar to the Circle Star billboard, which kind of goes against number 3 on page 1, which is to reduce hazards that may be caused or worsened by driver and pedestrian distraction caused by signs, especially those projecting over public rights of way or near roadway intersections. And so I'm just trying to figure out how any billboard that you put up there is going to meet the purpose of the sign ordinance in the first place.
Well, for the signs that are freeway oriented, which is what we're talking about with the billboards, Caltrans has very specific regulations on how often those messages are able to change, the brightness of it. I know there was one sign that when it flashed light, it was white, it was way too bright, and they had to adjust that. So Caltrans does have very specific regulations. As far as nearby residential, maybe I'd defer to city attorney. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I'm also just confused. I thought that this ordinance only deals with signs that are freeway oriented. This is just permitting signs that are freeway oriented. So
Correct.
If it's freeway oriented, I'm not saying you wouldn't be able to see it from a residential area, but it's not actually designed to be seen from a residential area by the very nature of this ordinance. It's designed to be seen from the freeway.
But that doesn't
it
prevent
two-sided?
it from being seen.
What's that?
But isn't the suggestion that it be allowed to be two-sided?
Yeah, but it's, my understanding is this is just for freeway-oriented signs only.
Correct.
It only permits freeway-oriented signs, period.
Can it be oriented in such a way that it's oriented towards the roadway, the freeway, but not seen from a nearby residential area?
Well, the billboard companies only want it oriented to the freeway. They're not at all interested in having it
And this-
oriented towards the residences.
but-
But the specific one we're talking about is a V orientation so that you can see it from north and south of Highway 101.
Well, and it's more than that. I mean, the change to this, the ordinance you're talking about is constrained by the other ordinance. And if you turn to page 17,
Right.
it says the billboard must be oriented primarily for viewing from the adjacent freeway, and it must be consistent with the California Outdoor Advertising Act and the Federal Highway Beautification Act as applicable. So, I mean, these are freeway-oriented signs.
I understand that. That doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be visible from residential neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I mean, do we have, and it also sounds like Mr. Marsters has some sort of particular sign. Is there like a particular sign that we're talking about, or?
Well,
We have a
this is-
pending application.
Pending application.
That the city council's interested in for a new billboard at the end of Branston.
Okay.
And that proposal's for a 55-foot tall sign that's V-oriented, and as I indicated, they've submitted visual analysis, so you can see, and we've had the CEQA consultant take a look at that, and they've indicated that it is not visible from adjacent residential. Due to the line of sight, there's a lot of buildings, kind of surrounding it, and you wouldn't be able to see it.
And
there may be, though, what I'm trying to indicate, a vantage point somewhere in the city that you could see it, but not immediate neighborhood
From my
would
house.
not have a line of sight.
Alameda looking
So
down.
just to clarify, the one sign that's already contemplated, they've already done a study and indicated that it's not readily visible from the residential areas, and that any other sign that goes up has to be, I mean, it's only going to go up if there's a contract with the city, so it's
Correct.
not like anyone is, the city is going to have oversight of any sign that goes in.
That's correct.
And if it doesn't want it, it just doesn't have to do it. All right.
I didn't have that information that said anything about Branston, that Branston project not being visible from the residential neighborhood. That, to me, that is a
That
new
item
piece of evidence.
will
So
come
that was
before
covered.
you if
I know, but
this
that's what I was trying to
ordinance
get
is adopted.
at.
So
Okay,
we're not quite
so-
there yet, but we have completed the
okay,
environmental.
so
Or
just
can we
to-
get there without this room?
So just to
Not an item on the
just to
agenda.
circle back, since
say too much?
Branston isn't actually in front of us,
Right.
and we are looking at the ordinance. And Scott, to your point, you just wanted to make sure the language was clear.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
And do you feel, after listening to Lisa, that it?
I heard her say that it is not visible from the nearby residential neighborhood, and I'm happy with that.
Okay, great.
That's what I was
Perfect. They need
asking
to be
for.
evaluated. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Lisa about Title 18? Okay. I have no public, I wanted to open this up to public comment since it is a public hearing, and I don't see any public, any speaker cards, so I assume there's nobody here from the public to speak on this. Okay, great. In that case, what I'd like to go ahead and do is, I guess, close the public hearing, and we can deliberate and make a motion.
Sure. I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Any additional comments, questions, concerns, or deliberation topics from the commission?
I would observe that, I mean, and we're not, I mean, I'm not, although I could be educated. If I were concerned about residential viewing in the future as to other billboards, we could easily modify, what I guess would be on page 17, we could modify D5 and add, a subsection 3 that says, the billboard cannot be easily and readily available from residential uses. I'm not suggesting that we do that because this is the city has to approve it. I mean, the city presumably is going to hear from the residents and isn't going to put up a billboard that folks don't want. So I'm not advocating for that, but I would observe that if that's something we wanted, it would be easy to add.
Staff, would you agree that that would be easy to add, or would that cause additional concerns for the ordinance?
Can I ask, are there other potential sites that may be considered down the road? My concern is that we become a city of a series of these billboards, and that's not going to look very good for our city. And if the intent is to do this one time and to make a little bit of money off of it, but not do it in the future on 5 other sites along the freeway either side, then I'm comfortable with this. If the intent is that this is the beginning of a pattern, then I think that we need to put something in there.
I guess I just want to make sure we're focusing on the ordinance. I don't know that we can properly predict what, because I see your concern though.
Yeah.
I do.
Are there other
we don't-
locations that could be potentially used?
Well, this is to govern city-owned property that's freeway-oriented. I think there's 3 parcels that I'm aware of, except 2 of them are long-term leases right now. One is an office building at 800 Britain. City technically owns that property, but it's got a 99-year lease on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's where Burger King and the hotel site is by the freeway interchange. That's also city-owned property, but subject to long-term lease arrangements. And so that's amending those leases is a whole separate negotiation to even possibly allow for billboards. But I don't think there's any other sites. And I do not want to talk too much about particulars of an application you're going to see. I think that's a valid point. But the proposed ordinance, I've reviewed it. We have a special counsel who reviewed it to make sure it, because of the issues we've had previously with billboards, that it was narrowly focused. We do have the pending application that was mentioned before. Your role in the process is to be an advisory body, and so if you like the policy and you want to move forward with it, you can approve it, or you could recommend denial, but it's going to go up to the city council in either case.
Okay.
How tall is the Circle Star billboard compared to what this ordinance is?
Talking about the little one on the ground level?
No, the big flashy one.
The big flashy one by the building. Yeah, but it's blocked by a building, but
Yeah, it's probably similar, but staff doesn't have a 100%.
is it similar? Okay.
Yeah, but we don't know.
So I guess the question is at this point, do we want to add a third condition to 5, or does that just make things muddier?
Well, I think that our city attorney is saying that we
shouldn't.
No.
Recommend additional conditions. I just want to make sure they're crafted in a way that is going to be durable, and we can. And I'm fine to work with you tonight on drafting an additional finding.
Right.
So how would you craft some wording that would protect a nearby residential area? Not necessarily anyone in particular, but a hypothetical nearby neighborhood.
Well,
Would it be light?
I think the language you'd want to use, and staff can help me because I'm the attorney, not the planner, but I think we could craft something that would have you take into consideration visibility to nearby neighborhoods. We don't want to make a finding that's impossible
Right.
to make, but we do want to have a finding that gives you the ability to review if that's something you want, the ability to review.
And if
Oh,
it's
yeah.
far enough away and it's just a dot on the in the horizon, it's a little bit different than the glow of the light flashing in your bedroom window.
I would agree with that, and that's why I think nearby or surrounding residential neighborhoods is
Yeah.
different than me viewing it up in Alameda where I can see everything with lights. I mean,
That must be nice.
it is nice. I'm not gonna lie. That's why I like it. So, Greg, I think the language you just said, assuming that that's appropriate in a planning sense, works. It seems consensus-wise for the commission.
So the language would be something like the billboard.
Cannot be, or the billboard
Well, we.
should take into consideration.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Billboard
Visibility from nearby.
The billboard design should take into account visibility in nearby residential neighborhoods. Something along those lines might be. It gives you the flexibility to consider how substantial the impact is, if any. And I do think that we're talking about limited circumstances, given that the way these billboards are designed, they really are oriented to the freeway. They're V-shaped so that they're angled away. If I could give you a graphic design with my hands, they're angled outward. You don't really see that when you're driving by one, but they're substantially angled outward. It's probably about 30 degrees or something like that, where they're purposefully not flat against each other so that the visibility does extend into the neighborhoods.
Right.
It goes out directed. In this case, they are directed out towards the freeway, so the illuminated side is really not coming into the town at all.
Okay.
I think some of these locations would just not physically be visible
Right.
to San Carlos, except perhaps the airport.
Okay. All right.
Madam
well,
Chair, I think
yes.
that you should also require a visual simulation to be submitted as part of the application.
And
So I think that would be helpful.
should we put that under condition 5 also?
Yeah.
Okay. Emil, thank you. It's a good idea.
5
So that we
is
say
in the
nighttime
findings. I think it
simulation?
probably goes somewhere else, but I figure I could probably make a motion that'll cover it.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion before we ask our motion guru to make our motion? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I would move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending the City Council adopt an ordinance to amend the San Carlos zoning ordinance, Title 18 of the San Carlos Municipal Code, Section 18.2 relating to signs, consistent with Exhibit A to the Commission packet, but adding a requirement that applicants include a visual simulation and a required finding that the sign design considers
Take into consideration the visibility of surrounding neighborhoods.
visibility of surrounding neighborhoods.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Okay. Everybody approved. Great. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. The next item on our agenda is unfinished business. We have East San Carlos quality of life improvement issues. And then, Lisa, would you like to go ahead and present on that? Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners.
The item before you tonight is on the agenda as unfinished business. As you recall from the recent public hearings that were held before the commission, beginning on September 16th, continuing on to September 30th, and then concluding on October 7th, there were several items that the commission had requested staff to place on a separate list that could come back before the commission to review and consider, in the spirit that these are items that would create improvements to the adjacent neighborhoods that are near the Caltrain station and within the vicinity of the proposed Transit Village project. I'll just put them up here on the screen, but they're in your packet. Staff captured 6 items. Certainly, there may be more that we didn't capture, or it's possible that that could occur. But these are the ones that surfaced out of the outcome of those public hearings. And the first is to continue to work with Samtrans to address the garbage issues along Old County Road. In your packet, it states the location of garbage should be reviewed. There is a missing a word in there. The location of garbage cans should be reviewed. That's what we heard. The other issue had to do with the illegal homeless encampments and concerns that those should be addressed. The third item was to look at the possibility of creating a new city policy whereby dirt haul routes would no longer be able to use Holly Street. There was also a request that the city look at the possibility of lowering speed limits on Old County Road, look at requiring the installation of more trees along Old County Road, particularly south of Holly, as part of the East Side Connect project, and then that the City Council explore creation of a quiet zone as part of train operations in the city of San Carlos, such as not allowing whistleblowing. So the direction from the commission could be that staff forward this list to the City Council for their consideration and discussion and for potential implementation. So this concludes my portion of the report. Happy to entertain discussion by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Was this list comprehensive of everything that we did not address or that we could not address as a part of...
We could be here till 1:30 in
Correct.
the morning.
Is this a good start? Yes.
Truly comprehensive
Actually, that is
list.
not a motion that I would make.
Yes,
so
I
I think
know.
we'd be
Nor would you get a second on that one either.
Right. I think
Is there anything specifically that you'd like to see added that we haven't addressed?
I think there are some overriding considerations here, and one is trying to reach out to the community to solve some of the existing problems that are on the east side, and this is a small piece of the things that are over there, and I think I would like to see these forwarded to the city council. But I think it's sort of a symptom of a larger issue, which is that there really needs to be a greater outreach to address the concerns for the residents that live over there. And
is there a way you would articulate that in this list, or is that just a
I would
statement?
probably make that number 7.
Okay, so
Okay.
would it be a communication outreach
I would
type
I
of
would
language?
a attempt to reach out to the east side neighborhood to address the issues that they feel are important to be addressed, or something like that. I'm not the wordsmith.
We'll flower that up a little.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I would certainly agree that some further
it's-
attempt to reach out to the neighborhood would be appropriate.
You don't look happy.
No, I'm nothing. No, you don't need
I
to
mean-
worry about my happiness. No one else does.
Right, and I think that's fair, Scott. And I also think that to pretend like we would have a comprehensive list certainly isn't what staff intended. And certainly
Right.
isn't
No,
what we
and
intended during
I
our
understand that,
discussion.
and that's
Yeah.
why I'm
So,
not
yeah,
trying to.
keeping it-
I mean,
right.
like I said, I could
Right.
talk until
So
1:30,
keeping it open
but
to
then
have a
that's not going to
conversation would
happen.
work.
Yeah,
What if we did that
Fair enough.
instead of this list?
and that is one of the things I thought about was instead of this list, say, encourage the city to have community outreach and look for a solution to problems such as these. Okay, and that way, we're not saying you have to do all of this right now, and this isn't something that there are a few things on here, though, that I think are very important.
Yeah, I think that just given the amount of time we spent over many meetings, addressing some concerns that couldn't be directly addressed either through the EIR process or through the project approval process, I think it's important to have some of the things that we agreed need to be addressed in a list. By no way are we intending it to be comprehensive. These are just some things.
And
that
that's
came
fine.
out.
My only problem is, and I'll be happy to vote on this, but and just provide a clarification. Like there's some considering stuff is always great.
Sure.
I mean, I'm a big fan of considering stuff, but there are some things on here that I think ultimately might be a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so it's like I don't want to make a motion that suggests that by voting
Right.
to have these considered by the city council that I'm suggesting that they're a good idea.
Right.
I mean, and there were clearly other things that I remember specifically that Scott raised, that other people raised that aren't on this list. Like, for example, spending the park money that was going to come in through the transit billet project on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I think that that's a good idea or a bad idea, but it's not on this list. That's why I thought that maybe just indicating that at the transit village, the many transit village hearings, numerous issues were raised by the east side residents that we could not resolve as part of the entitlements process, and that outreach to the east side community regarding their current issues and their needs might be good for San Carlos as a whole. But
I see your point.
But again, I mean, I'm not going to be a problem. Folks want to make a motion, I can vote on this. I'll just make my and I can even say that I have no problem voting yes on this, but I would have to do it with a caveat that I'm not endorsing any of these as changes.
Yeah, I have the same concerns. I can't. I mean, I couldn't say that I supported all of these. I mean, if City Council wants to consider them, that's one thing. But there are things in here that I would not personally endorse.
So maybe we can drop the implementation part of that. Because that's what the motion is.
Where is the motion? This was. I'm
The
sorry. let me just-
consideration and
And
implementation.
implementation. I see. For consideration, then take out implementation. It's possible. I want to know.
I mean, it
kind
sort of
of
feels like you're
curious.
kicking the can down the road a little bit by.
No, I am. I agree. I'm kind of curious to know which
But
ones.
I'm kind of curious which ones people have
consider.
issues with.
I mean, I can do that. So lower speed limits on Old County Road.
That's the initial.
Maybe that's a great idea. I don't know, but I think that that's something that would probably need to go to the Traffic Commission and be studied before anyone can make a decision on that. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea. I don't know.
And I do know that there are a lot, like if a certain number of people are
So
going a
would
certain
you
speed
be-
limit, you can't
Explore
just-
creation of a quiet zone. I mean, that would be great. I think that that's probably pushing a boulder uphill. I'm not sure that that's really possible based on what I heard during the EIR process. The dirt haul routes from using Holly Street. Again, I think that would require more study. I know people raise that issue. I mean, I guess I don't have any problem with trying to address garbage issues. That's a great idea. Collaboration is good, although, I mean, we just had, I think, one person say that there were homeless encampments near the San Carlos Caltrain station. I don't know whether those actually exist or not.
I don't either.
Okay, well, I mean, so that's kind of where I am on these. It's like we took 6, and I think staff did a great job in wrangling us, which, you know, we're a very difficult group.
easy, right.
Probably we may, if we're nothing else, we may be the most difficult planning commission ever. Although I will exclude Ms. Bergman from that because, you know, she hasn't had an opportunity to truly be trouble yet. But basically what staff did is it took, you know, some issues that were raised by the community that may very well be legitimate issues and put them on a list. And it's incomplete. And some of them require study, some of them don't. That's the issue. But again, I mean, I don't feel the need to stay here and talk about it for a long time. If someone wants to make the motion, I'm ready to vote on it. If someone wants to just ask the city council to do some outreach to the east side, I'd vote on that too.
I guess.
Your point?
Yeah, I what I don't want to do is vote on this and feel like it's comprehensive. Okay. And so.
Can we just not? How about this? Can we just not vote on it and then maybe come up with something else?
I just had a suggestion, just in the opening sentence of the following list represents. I mean, we could add a couple words like examples of, and that would make it so it's not like the way it's worded. It could be interpreted as a defined list, and if you said examples of, then you would be saying that it's just the examples that you can think of as part of the process, but that doesn't limit city's future consideration of other items.
I think what I'd like to get out of this is an attempt for city staff to work with the residents on the east side to solve some of the longstanding issues that the residents over there feel like they have been ignored. And no matter how hard they scream and how hard they yell, they're not getting satisfaction from trying to solve any of these problems. So I don't know how to word that correctly, but I think it involves reaching out to the community in a way that that at least the residents feel hasn't been.
Well, would it be? Forgive me. Would it be appropriate then? I guess to either ask staff to come up with new language, or to table this, or to vote on something completely different at another time. The only reason I think about that is that the more I think about a list per se, the more I think that if we're missing something, is that going to be troublesome, even though it's a suggestion?
What I think would really work for you, Scott, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is a good. I mean, I just think if we had a resolution that said something like, whereas we held 10 meetings regarding the transit village, and whereas during those meetings the number of members of the East Side community raised concerns regarding X, Y, and Z. Whereas the Planning Commission believes having dialogue with the East Side community regarding those issues, including listing these 6 issues here. The Planning Commission resolves that it recommends to the City Council to have an outreach meeting to discuss these and other issues with the East Side community.
I have to admit, I like that better.
I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the concern is that it's just a resolution, and
but these are also.
No, I understand. I'm just saying it's just the concern is going to be similar to what the residents of the East Side feel has gone on in the past, which is they've sort of there's been a lot of talk,
Right.
okay? But
No, I see
not a lot of
that.
action.
But I feel like a resolution would be almost stronger than this motion.
Is that something we could do tonight? And the reason I ask that if that's not something that we can do tonight, then it's going to miss being bundled together with the transit village when it goes to the city council. So instead, they're going to be two separate things and not necessarily connected in any way. And so by sort of disconnecting them, you sort of lower the impact of having something like that.
But the reason why they're on this list is because it already has been.
Yes, but they were going to go to the planning committee, to the city council on the same.
I almost guarantee the city council is going to hear about these things on Monday, would be my wild guess.
I don't think it's going to be missed by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm at your pleasure, Scott. I mean, what do you want to do?
Well, I guess I would like something that encourages community outreach, okay? And it doesn't have to specifically name all of the things that are on here, but I think that's all I'm really looking for is just a resolution that says, based on the number of issues that were raised during the process of the transit village, we encourage city staff and the city council to reach out to the East Side neighborhood to attempt to solve some of the longstanding issues.
I think that language is fine.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
what Scott said. Can we just do that?
Yes, staff would be happy to revise this and add language, such as we mentioned before at the beginning of the paragraph, which would confirm that these are examples of some of the issues that were brought up, that they include but are not limited to the number of issues that are that have been raised and that are certainly seem to be remaining out in the neighborhood. We can definitely add language to reflect that there is a request to continue to reach out and to reach out to the GESC in discussing the issues in the attempt to resolve them. So we can definitely, make modifications to the language here, and then include it in the packet going forward to the council on the 28th, if that's what the commission desires.
I think I think that sounds
Yeah.
good.
I just have a hard. The one that really bothers me is the lowering the speed limits. I'm just really not comfortable with that. And I mean, everyone's got a vote. So, but that one I just
Would
can't get behind.
if we modified it to say consider
Study.
or study?
Study.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think that's fair because, like I said, you really can't just arbitrarily.
Oh, no.
Yes, limits anyway, they have to go
yeah.
through a study,
Yeah.
seeing how fast people go through it before they're allowed to lower it. Okay, so let's do that then. Let's add that language, and then let's go ahead and
I
change
think-
number 4 to study,
Okay.
and then we can go ahead and. Can I have a motion then, or are you writing?
I was just trying to, I was listening, but I was just wondering, is basically, we basically want to tell the city council that a number of issues were raised at hearing related to the transit village, including items 1 through 6 in the East San Carlos quality of life improvement issues that the Planning Commission could not address during the entitlement process, and that the commission would ask the council to consider and or study those and other issues raised by the East Side community. I mean, is that what we're trying to do? And I was just trying to write it out in some way that is that.
Yeah.
So maybe I should make a motion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me just finish it real quick.
Do you have your second ready, Jesse? I'm kidding. Sorry to
Yeah, whatever you said.
Change number 4 to read study also.
Okay.
So study
So-
study lowering speed limits on Old County. But we don't need to.
I'm just trying to think of how to phrase the motion. I'm just struggling.
This is a first.
But can't we just?
But so you just want to say, move the planning commission to direct staff to forward the East San Carlos quality of life improvement issues to the city council for their consideration and study?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The only concern that I have with that is that it sort of limits it to these 6.
Okay. I mean, that's why I was just trying to come up with a preamble.
Well,
Through the chair,
Yeah, I don't
Vice
know that it does
Vice
limit.
Chair Silberman, I think
Yes.
what you had just stated, you basically repeated the recommendation on the first page of the staff report and changed implementation to study.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also reflect in your motion based upon the commission's request to modify number 4 on the list to studying lowering speed limits, and also add language, overarching language, that the city council or the city should work with the Greater East San Carlos Neighborhood Association in resolving these the examples, such as, not including but not limited to, items 1 through 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
included
kind
but
of
not
where
limited to.
you're
Yes.
wanting to go.
Yes.
Can I just make a motion that's consistent with what Ms. Porras just indicated? Would that be good enough?
Yeah, I'll second that one.
Is that good enough, Greg? Before we.
That is, I think it's a motion, so I think the idea is staff will draft something consistent with your motion, and that's what'll end up in the city council
Okay,
packet.
great. Then I understand that David has motioned and Jesse has seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you guys very much. Okay, next item is reports, correspondence, and general information. A report on recent city council actions.
The one thing I'd like to note to the commission is that this past Monday, the city council adopted revisions to their code of ethics policy that applies to the council and all commissions and board members. So as soon as I get the final language on that, I will bring that back to the commission. And that's the only thing I have on A.
Thank you. B, Planning Commission comments or reports. I just have one really brief one, and that's to say to any of the members of the public that are actually watching this, how much I appreciated those people who came and participated and stuck through us through the Transit Village process. It was really it was really heartwarming and reassuring to live in a community to know that people were staying till 1 a.m. to the very end to see that. So I just wanted to thank those citizens out there that certainly didn't have to stay, but did stay for the entirety of the meetings. Thank you. Does anybody else have any Planning Commission comments or reports?
I won't be here on November 4th, and I need an RDRC backup.
November 4th? Okay, let me check my calendar.
Okay.
Correspondence?
Staff has received no correspondence this evening other than what's already been presented to the commission as part of the Sprint application.
Thank you. Planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects.
I know that the commission is already aware, but indeed, the city council will consider the proposed Transit Village project on this coming Monday, October the 28th. There will be a study session prior to the regular agenda, beginning at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers, and the official public hearing will begin on the regular council agenda later that evening. For the upcoming November 4th Planning Commission hearing, there are 2 items that will be presented before the commission. One is the continuation of the project at 934 Laurel Street, and the second is the consideration of a Mills Act contract with the property at 40 Pine Avenue.
Mills Act? Okay, you know what? That's something I can ask offline. Thanks, Lisa. Okay.
Tax status.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, seeing nothing else, I go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 9:25. Thank you, everybody.